Hello and welcome to the Microbehunter Microscopy podcast. My name is Oliver Kim. Hi, Oliver here. And in this episode, I'd like to talk about the home laboratory for microscopy, home laboratory for amateur microscopy. And I would like to talk a little bit about the equipment and how it should be designed and, some issues to talk about here in any case. Well, to boil it down, a home laboratory should fulfill the three S's. The three S's of a home lab. What is it? It's stability, storage, and safety. I'd like to talk about these three terms here. First of all, you need a stable desktop for your microscope. It's really important. Otherwise, if you bump against the table or if you walk across the floor and if the table is not stable enough, then all of these vibrations will carry on and will pass on over to the microscope, and this will cause a vibrating image and a vibrating picture, which is not so nice, especially if you would like to take pictures with a microscope. So stability is of course important, also because some of the microscopes are quite heavy. So you have to be aware that the table also has to be reasonably stable. Second point, storage. You should be able to lock away. You should be able to store your microscope in a safe and of course also a dust-free place. Or if you don't have a cupboard where you can store it, well, you can store it on your desk. That's what I'm doing right now, but then I have a dust cover. Let's not forget about the fact that dust is a real problem in microscopy, especially if you want to take pictures. It can be really annoying. Microscopes can be difficult to clean, especially when the dust settles in places which are hard to reach. So I think avoiding dust is better than taking care of it afterwards. So locking it away in a safe place or having a good dust cover is already, it solves already half of the problem. And last, safety. Here I'm specifically talking about if you are into sample preparation. So if you're using any chemicals, any solvents, then they should of course be kept out of the reach of children. And in case there are leaks, sometimes this happens, you've got to take care that you're able to contain them somehow so that they cannot damage other objects and of course also yourself. So stability, storage, and safety. These are the three things that, I'm not saying that these are exclusive, but at least these are the three S's that I could think of. So there are two more points I'd like to talk about. The advantages of a dedicated lab and some other requirements of setting up a microscopy workplace. So what is a dedicated lab? Amateur microscopy is a hobby. So it is unlikely that many of the amateurs will have a separate room which is just there for microscopy. There are some amateurs that have that, but I would probably say the majority of us, basically we have a desk maybe at best. And on this desk we also have to do other work, and we're also then doing microscopy here. But to have a separate lab has some advantages, but I also have to say it depends a little bit specifically what you would like to do. Not everyone is into sample preparation, and then of course the issues are again different. But the advantages of a dedicated lab is you've got a safe working environment. I already talked about that. Generally, people are often not alone, but their family members around, there's furniture around. You do not want to get any solvents spilled over the furniture. And also, if you are using any solvents, which you should not, you need, you shouldn't inhale them. So you need also proper ventilation, and you got to be able to open the window. So safety is first. After all, it's a hobby, and we don't want to damage our health. The second important point, well, I don't know if it's really very important, but it's convenience and comfort. If you have a dedicated place to work on, then you do not need to pack or unpack your microscopes as much, and also the chemicals are in reach, it's a convenience factor simply. Okay, my microscope, for example, I don't have to lock it away in a cupboard because I simply have it standing next to me, next to the microphone into which I'm talking right now, as a matter of fact. So it's quite convenient. Equipment safety is another point. You don't want to move microscopes around too much, otherwise you're going to drop them maybe, which shouldn't happen. But if you drop them on your toe, it might hurt your microscope a little bit. So you don't want to damage your equipment. Specimen quality. Now, if you have a dedicated room that you can keep reasonably dust-free, then of course this also impacts on the specimen quality, because the specimen is of course more dust-free. So that is, it's also less of a hassle. It's also easier to clean up afterwards. And the last point that I came up with is, if you have a own home lab, it's also fun, and it's a motivating thing. You have your working environment that you've designed basically around your hobby, and that is of course also from an emotional and from a subjective viewpoint a very, at least for me, a very important component as well. Yeah, maybe there are more points. I mean, these are just a few that I could think of, but I have to admit that a separate or a dedicated home laboratory is a little bit of a luxury, I have to admit. Okay, so I'm in this position right now that I have a separate room now in which I have a separate computer. I've got my microscopes here. I can do some other, I can practice music instruments a little bit, yeah. And then we've got the office where we're actually doing the work. So me and my wife. So that is quite convenient to keep these tasks a little bit separated. So the next point here is the requirements of setting up a microscopy workplace. So that is a little bit goes a little bit more into the specifics here. I'm just going to read down here. You need a place for the microscope. Didn't I already talk about that? You need a safe place for the microscope. Why am I repeating myself here? Okay. So I already mentioned that the table's got to be stable. You don't want to have a lot of aberrations here. You want the table to be easily cleanable. That is also important. So maybe some kind of a synthetic desktop is sometimes may be better than an absorbing natural wood one. Okay. You've got to have a place for the chemicals. I mean, already mentioned that. I keep my chemicals locked away. I'm out of the reach of children, of course. But then I have to admit, I don't really keep any dangerous chemicals inside my apartment. That is, for me, a fundamental principle, because it's simply not worth the risk, and I don't need them. So what dangerous chemicals do I have? They're not really that dangerous. I've got acetone and I've got alcohol as the two solvents that I'm using to make also permanent slides and also to clean the slides. Okay. So family friendliness, that's actually one I overlooked. I don't want to get in trouble with my family, especially if I store certain biological specimens, which might be a little bit disgusting. Okay, so that is something that I don't want to do. I don't want to use the kitchen refrigerator to store fly larvae, for example, which I'm going to dissect. That is a little bit disgusting for them, and I don't want that either. Dust-free environment, I already mentioned. Difficult to achieve, I think that is a real thing here. I think the only way to really deal with that is to wipe up and clean up and vacuum the floor quite frequently. But ultimately it's a question of time until the dust starts to settle again on the optics. So a place for storing water samples. I used to keep water samples in jars, in glass jars. And they do not like direct sunlight, because what's going to happen is the following: that the direct sunlight is going to heat up the water in the jar, and this drives out the oxygen, and then any water organisms might have a problem. Maybe if there are enough algae in there, they start produce enough oxygen, but that's nothing that you can rely on. So I actually once was able to kill a whole jar of pond water simply by leaving it standing in direct sunlight. Running water would be kind of convenient as well. Most likely, most home labs don't have that. But that is not a big deal, because I've got my bathroom right next door. So I do have access to running water to clean all of the equipment and all these things. Okay. A workbench, if you want to prepare your slides, you got to be very careful that if you use any stains, they can be very aggressive and they can stain, of course, furniture and also the table. So that's something that you would like to have some kind of, a tabletop that is stain resistant. And last but not least, also something I already mentioned, you want to have a proper ventilation, especially if you start to make permanent slides. When you're fooling around with solvents, organic solvents, you do not want them to accumulate inside your room. Fresh air is always a good idea. Okay, so that was kind of the thing here. Now, all of this is pretty obsolete, or most of it is pretty obsolete or irrelevant if you simply want to observe permanent slides. And that's actually the thing that I recommend beginners to do first. Buy yourself a slide box with permanent slides and start observing them. And if you simply want to observe pond water, all you need is you get yourself a glass jar, you fill it up with some pond water and some rocks and some leaves, and then you basically keep it on your table. You have this mini aquarium. And yeah, then you can always take for the next couple of days. You can take some sample water out of the jar and then observe it under the microscope. That's fine. All of the other things are with the chemicals and so on only necessary if you really want to go into slide preparation. Something that I might not recommend right at the beginning because there's so many other things that you have to learn anyway. If you are a beginner, having said that, so I would say get yourself a good table. One that you can clean easily and where you can remove the dust easily, or one in a room that does not have direct sunlight, because direct sunlight disturbs a little bit if you want to observe using the microscope. Yeah, and then just get going and then see into which direction the hobby is going to take you, and then you can always, of course, build a home laboratory around your microscope anytime later. But these are simply my general recommendations. I'm quite sure that some of you might have other approaches to the whole issue. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Okay, I think this was it for right now. I'm already talking about 10 minutes, 11 minutes. Okay, that was a pretty fast episode here as well. In any case, I wish you a nice day, and as always, all the best. And happy microscopy!